there everybody, welcome to Tucktuk's Trinkets and Terrain. A few weeks ago it was Amazon Prime Day, their sort of yearly sales event thing. One of the things I picked up was this cheap wooden model kit of a ruined house. But when I got it, it was pretty uninspiring, the details were super flat, just overall kind of boring to look at. So I thought I would try and elevate it a bit, add some more detail and depth to it. So this is my end result. Super happy with how it turned out, but just really simple techniques and cheap materials, nothing too fancy, but definitely one of my favorite projects that I've completed. So I'm going to show you how I did all this. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoy.
Alright, so the first thing I did was just put the thing together. You see it come in this little nice case and all the sheets with all the pieces labeled. So it was relatively easy to follow the instructions that were included. It did come with these couple of minis, including this cool sort of fighter dog thing and the sort of cartoony sorcerer character up in the top there. So that was kind of a cool surprise that I didn't notice when I bought it. But I just glued everything together, followed the instructions, nice and simple. You can see it came with this little sort of fallen down piece that you're supposed to glue in the middle here. But this is where I started to add on my own stuff. You can see the details on here are literally just slightly burned in with the, I assume, laser cutter that they used to cut out all the pieces. So first thing I did was grab these sort of skinny craft sticks. They're very similar to popsicle sticks, but they're just a little bit thinner. And then I just used my X-Acto blade to carve them down and give them a more rough hewn look. You can see the difference here with the carved one on the left. I then grabbed my tacky glue and just started to measure these out and glue them into place, trying to just following the pattern on the building itself. Nothing too complicated here, just measuring them, marking them with the pencil, stepping them down. I used a bit of sandpaper to smooth out the cut ends, because the clippers I have tend to pinch them into a point instead of making them flat. And then I just glued them down with the glue. Nothing too complicated. And then I just did that a whole bunch on all of the walls. You can see I cut pieces to match the sort of ruined and wrecked sections of the wall, made frames around the windows, things like that. I then also glued down a couple short pieces on the floor here, just to give the hint that there was a floor here, but you will see what we do with that later down the road. For the inside of the wall, I grabbed my enormous bucket of joint compound, which is apparently the only size that my local home improvement store carries. And then using a wide popsicle stick, I just proceeded to put down as thin of a layer as I could on all of the insides of the walls. You can see there that I tried to do a wood pattern into the wood, but I didn't really like how it was turning out, so I just stopped doing that pretty quickly. And then after some cleanup, just wiping away excess and cleaning it up, that was all good to go. I set that aside to dry. For the base, I wanted to create sort of a overgrown, abandoned sort of feel to this, so I spread out some white glue, and then I'm just going to flock this with my mixed aggregate sand and pebble mixture. This is going to get basically completely covered up later with some static grass, but just in case the static grass comes off at some point, there'll be a nice texture underneath it so that it's not just plain wood underneath. I also realized that I forgot to glue the door back in before I put the sand in, so I glued that back in after I had applied all the wood slats to that, and that was all good to go. I also realized that there were some square pieces of wood that didn't quite match the rough hewn look that I had given to all of the craft sticks, so using my X-Acto knife I just went back in to all the exposed, perfectly cut square edges and just carved them down a bit, give them more of a random, rough hewn look. The last step of the construction is the foundation stone at the base here, so I grabbed my Crayola clay, flattened out a piece, and then just stuck that down over a corner here, and then just sort of pushed it together until it resembled, a rough stone-ish look. And then to give it some detail, I used one of my texture rollers. This is a small cobblestone 1, and then quickly realized the importance of wetting down your tools when working with clay. So I tore all that off and started again, but this time I laid down a thin layer of tacky glue underneath the clay to help it adhere better. Repeated that whole process with the clay, just mushing it down until it looked pretty good. Wet my tool this time, and then gently pushed it into the clay to give the cobblestone texture. And since there was curves on this, there was a few pieces that the textural missed. I just used this tool to finish out the textures that got missed to give everything a more complete look. And then last step, I just gingerly touched the clay with a ball of aluminum foil to give it some more rocky texture. I let that corner dry before moving on, as I didn't want to accidentally mess it up by dropping it or just accidentally touching it with my fingers or whatever. But I did all 4 corners, as well as the big long wall on the back side, doing the same thing until everything was done. And then with that, the construction is complete, and it was time to move on to painting. So, like always, I just did a thick layer of some Mod Podge and black paint all mixed together. But while I'm doing this, I just want to remind you to make sure you hit the subscribe button to see future videos. I post crafting videos every other Friday, as well as a weekly unboxing video. And I do occasionally post other random videos every so often. Make sure you hit the like button if you are enjoying this. Leave a comment of maybe something that I could have done differently or better, something that you would have done, different material, anything like that. I'm always looking to improve my crafting skills and supplies. And share this with your friends if you think they'd enjoy it as well. But more than anything you do, I am super grateful for. So thank you for supporting the channel in whatever way you decide. With my black base coat all dry and everything all sealed in, I moved on to painting all my base colors. For the dirt, I use this burnt umber paint. For the drywall sort of interior, I use this twill color. And then for the wooden outside walls, I just use this brown, and all the stone foundation is this pewter gray. Next was a dry brush step, so I mixed my linen and umber paint to dry brush the ground. For the outside walls, I mixed this orange and brown together for just a lighter brown color. And then for the stone, I just used this gray color. I then covered everything in my homemade black wash. And after that was dry, I hit the drywall with this ivory color, as well as all the foundation stones from my last dry brush step. And then all of the wood I dry brushed in this light gray. Now here I could have called this done if I was planning to use this in maybe a desert or a barren landscape, but I usually like to have adventures in sort of lush forest environments, so I glued down this broken piece in the middle here, and then covered all of my dirt in another layer of PVA glue to get ready for the flocking. So this first flocking here is actually just a bunch of tea leaves all mixed together. I couldn't tell you the brands of the teas or anything like that, but there is a little bit of brown and dark green paint mixed in as well to create this sort of nice mulch flocking that I made, and I just sprinkled that in a couple random places. But for the majority of this, I use this flocking, which is essentially my sort of grab bag of excess static grass and anything that I might use that I've collected from past projects. That all gets mixed together so it doesn't go to waste. So there's lots of colors in here, lots of different textures and shapes, and I just spread that all over everything, making sure to cover all of the glue on the foundation here. And while that was still drying, I made some of my sort of standard lichen material here with some crushed up parsley leaves mixed with some glue. And I'm just going to smear this all over as much of the structure as I can, basically. This is an abandoned house. Clearly it's been destroyed, so nature would have overtaken it. So I'm just spreading this out on any flat surface, on the inside, outside, even a little bit on the exposed wood on the floor. And once everything was dry, I wanted to add a little bit of height to the flocking on the bottom here, so I'm just using some grass tufts that I've dipped in some PVA glue, put those around randomly, and then I also grabbed some clump foliage, and again just dipped it in some PVA glue and stacked it all on top of each other to make some bushes in a couple different places. And after a solid coat of a polyurethane spray to seal everything in, here is the final result. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I am very happy with how this turned out. Definitely one of my favorite projects. Probably could have gone a little more heavy on the foliage, but I wanted the interior to be somewhat playable so minis can be in there if necessary. But yeah, nothing else that comes to mind that I think I would do differently with another one of these. This is the first sort of model kit that I've put together like this, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I do have an Instagram account if you want to check that out. I post in-progress pictures as well as other things that I'm working on but not necessarily doing videos for. And I do have an Etsy shop as well if you want to pick up some random dungeon terrain that you don't necessarily want to craft yourself. Links for those you can find in the description below. But more than anything, thank you so much for stopping by and checking out the video. I hope to see you next time.